we do the AV? There we go. All right. My middle name is AV Disaster, so I apologize. Thanks very much for that very kind introduction. I appreciate it a lot. It's very generous, although I hope not too generous. I think we're going to have some fun here this afternoon, believe it or not. I'm not sure we're going to have quite that much fun, but we will have as much fun as it's possible to have within the constraint of being required to talk about some topic related to research and modeling and statistics, which, believe me, I know is a pretty big constraint when it comes to the subject of having fun. However, I can assure you, and I guess lucky for you and lucky for me, that when choosing between the options that Mark Twain laid out many, many years ago for the likes of us, between lies, damn lies, and statistics, I am not the statistics kind of researcher. I'm much more the damn liar kind of guy. So we'll see if we can skip over all the pain here this afternoon and go straight to a little more interesting set of topics. And indeed, there are lots of interesting things to talk about in the consumer marketplace nowadays. You know, if you just look at it, what you see is an enormous amount of change that is sweeping through the marketplace these days, and change that is occurring at a rate we've never seen before. In fact, this change is occurring so fast and is so enormous that it's just overwhelming to try and get your hands around it and figure out exactly what's going on. In fact, every time I try to do it, I'm so daunted by the task that I'm reminded of a line from a Keats poem that I studied when I was an undergraduate. And that, in and of itself, by the way, as a footnote, is just some measure of how enormous this change is, because it was a lot of hair ago that I was actually an undergraduate in college. But the line from the Keats poem goes, "There is nothing stable in this world. Uproar's your only music." And the uproar from the change that's occurring in the consumer marketplace nowadays is deafening. The CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, once likened it to being stuck in a giant wind tunnel going in the wrong direction. And when you find yourself in that position, it's very difficult to be able to listen and figure out what the line of harmony is, or the melody, if you will, that's carrying all of this along. And yet, as hard as it is, as truly difficult as this is to do, I do believe that if we listen carefully and we listen to the right things, we can find the current that's pushing all of this forward. And so what I'd like to do here at the outset of my presentation this afternoon, before I jump into a bunch of facts and figures and pretend like I'm a statistics kind of researcher, is to share with you a few of my favorite examples of the kind of changes that are confronting consumers in the marketplace nowadays. Because it's these sort of changes in totality, and frankly in overwhelming numbers, that are creating a brand new kind of consumer, and indeed are going to change the requirements for our business success as we look out into that future. So let me start by just sharing with you my single favorite example of the kind of change that's confronting consumers in the marketplace nowadays, and that's this internet phenomenon of web rings. Are you familiar with web rings? Web rings are these linked websites that are all tied together around some common theme or some specialized topic or some sort of arcane bit of knowledge. So that if I wake up this morning and decide that I want to be an expert in the topic of Australian law enforcement insignia, I can go to that web ring and immerse myself in that information and instantly invent myself into an expert on that particular topic. And if tomorrow morning I wake up and decide that I want to be an expert on the topic of the town of Almost Heaven, West Virginia, I just go to that web ring and immerse myself in that information and reinvent myself into an expert on that particular topic. And as a change confronting consumers in the marketplace, this is revolutionary, because this is redefining our understanding of what it is to be an expert. You know, being an expert is no longer some sort of lifelong career choice that we make, which defines the very essence of who we are and what we do. Nowadays, being an expert is just whatever I decide to do this morning, or whatever I decide to reinvent myself into tomorrow morning. Expertise is becoming more a matter of choice, or style, or fashion, if you will, than anything that's permanent. It's whatever consumers want to invent themselves into at whatever moment they decide they want to do it, for whatever purpose they may want to have. And this is a new consumer experience, and it's creating new consumer expectations in the marketplace about their abilities to invent and reinvent their conditions and their situations. And it's not just things related to the internet, it's all the things that confront consumers in the marketplace, like, for example, the Human Genome Project. Familiar with the Human Genome Project? This is this project that's being pursued competitively by a consortium of federal labs and institutes and a private company, Celera. And the promise of the Human Genome Project is that at some point in the very near future, we will finally realize this long-awaited goal of having the biological science it takes to completely re-engineer and reinvent our very physical bodies. We'll be able to ask ourselves questions we've never even thought of before, like, how healthy do I want to be? Or how much is good health worth to me? Or is a 5% improvement in my health worth $25,000 or $50,000 or $100,000? Should I take out a $300,000 mortgage on my body? What kind of stamina do I want to invent for myself? Do I want Winston Churchill's stamina, which is all about eat anything you want, drink anything you want, smoke anything you want, run 2 world wars and live into your 80s? Or do I want Michael Jordan's stamina, which is all about having a little bit left over at the end of the game to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat? This is a very different experience for consumers in the marketplace, to be able to ask questions we've never been able to ask before. But it's confronting consumers as a result of the kinds of changes that are sweeping through the marketplace. And it's not just our physical bodies, and it's not just our sense of being an expert, it's even our aspirations as well. Our sense of success and our ambitions in life are no longer some shared vision of the good life that we have in common with other people. We don't look to others anymore to validate or to approve or to guide us when we think about success. We don't look for some script to follow or some recipe for success. Nowadays, our definition of success is whatever we define for ourselves. Whatever I say, whatever I approve of, whatever I validate, whatever I invent. It's at my invention. And that, I think, is why Aetna Retirement Services has been running this print ad for the last year, a print ad that says, I don't know how I became a blank. I guess I just kind of fell into it. But I always thought I'd make a pretty good blank. That's when I retire. I'm going to start my own blank. Of course, that's after I spend a year or two blanking. Hey, you only live blank. This is Aetna Retirement Services not telling us how we should aspire to retirement, not telling us the rules to retirement, but saying, hey, you invent it. You define it. You fill in the blanks, and we'll be there to facilitate it, whatever you decide. Because Aetna Retirement Services knows that retirement and the rules for retirement, like many other things nowadays, are being invented by consumers at their own discretion for their own purposes. Indeed, on this very subject of sort of retiring and getting old and maturing, a couple of years ago at Yankelovich, in our Yankelovich Monitor research, our ongoing tracking of trends and values in the marketplace, we went out when baby boomers were first turning 50 years of age, and we asked baby boomers, what do you think the age is at which old age begins? The age at which old age starts. Now, what do you think baby boomers said in answer to this question? Maybe we can just get a little show of hands here and see. How many of you think that, on average, baby boomers believe that old age, quote unquote, begins at age 50? Anybody? Too many 50-year-olds here, I can tell. How about age 60? No hands. Age 70? There we go. Age 80? Well, on average, baby boomers think that old age, quote unquote, begins at age 79 and a half. Which is why turning 50 a couple of years ago was far more a media event than a life stage event for baby boomers. But what's most interesting about this particular figure is that the average lifespan in America nowadays is 76.1. There's sort of 3.5 years that gets lost in the shuffle here. But the point is that baby boomers anticipate that they'll be able to reinvent the rules of getting old, the rules of approaching these senior years. And it's not just baby boomers. There's a sentiment at large among consumers of all ages and all types for all categories nowadays that they can reinvent the rules and that they can write the rules for themselves. And indeed, this sensibility of rule breaking is something that resonates with consumers of all sorts. And what's bubbling up from this is a very different kind of consumer. A consumer that's a self-inventive consumer with the assurance and the competency and the determination to take advantage of the opportunities that are available in the marketplace now for the very first time, to invent things for themselves on their own initiative. We've heard a lot in the last 6 or 9 or 12 months about this shift of power and authority and control that's going on in the marketplace, but there's more than that going on. Because at the end of this transfer of power and authority and control in the marketplace, we wind up with more than just the same old consumer, now with more power and authority and control. What we wind up with is a very different consumer, a different sort of consumer, a consumer as different in kind as much as in degree, a consumer as different in character as much as in anything else, a consumer indeed that is no longer content to simply self-reliantly choose between options that we make available to them in the marketplace, no matter how well designed or how mass customized those options may be, but a consumer that instead wants to actively participate in the creation and the inventions of the options that they choose to consume. This is a new marketplace dynamic, one in which creation is replacing choice as the driving dynamic for consumers nowadays. Creation replacing choice is the driving dynamic in the marketplace, and that means we do things very differently. It means that instead of marketing to choosers, we're now marketing to inventors. It means instead of facilitating easy choice in the marketplace, we're trying to facilitate easy invention. And I'll give you lots of examples of this as we sort of move through the afternoon, but let me give you one sort of simple little silly example right now, which I think illustrates or crystallizes very well what's going on in the marketplace, and that's Barbie dolls. Are you familiar with Barbie dolls? You know, if you don't like the dozens upon dozens of highly customized, well-designed Barbie dolls that are on the retail shelves, you can go to the Mattel website and design your own Barbie doll. Invent it for yourself according to your own specifications, your own requirements, and Mattel will manufacture it according to the way you invent for yourself and ship it out to you overnight. And you know, the parallel phenomenon to this dynamic of self-invention is the dynamic of self-marketing. It's not just that consumers want to be involved in the creation of the products they consume. They want to be involved in how those things are marketed to them. Indeed, it's consumers becoming increasingly resistant to the old models of intrusiveness and dependence that have really driven a lot of our marketing styles in the past. It's consumers that are saying, whatever you want to produce should be at my invention, not yours. Whatever you want to market should be at my discretion, not yours. And you know what? This is a marketplace that we have difficulty figuring out how to respond to. And it's already breeding conflicts between marketers and consumers that are making the business press. As a matter of fact, this particular headline was on the front page of the New York Times business section just earlier this past June. And it's a headline that reads, "Battle has begun on internet ad blocking." And it's an article about the conflict pitting online marketers against online consumers, online marketers who want to transfer all the old models of intrusiveness into the internet, and cyber citizens actively resisting that in increasing numbers. You know, even supposedly cutting-edge internet marketers just don't get it. They're quoted in this article as saying, if users want free web content, they, like network TV viewers before them, will need to put up with advertising that pays for it. This is antiquated, outdated thinking. This is all about taking old models and putting them in a new domain when consumers are increasingly resisting the old models in every domain. Consumers want to be in control of their experience, and this is going to affect how they participate. And it also affects traditional media no less than new media. This headline appeared just earlier this month on the front page of the New York Times business section, and it asked the rhetorical question, will this machine change television? This is an article about personal video recorders, machines that are made with little hard disk drives, which can record up to 30 hours of television programming, even if it runs simultaneously. It can search your channels by theme, not just by title, and it can automatically skip over the commercial breaks that are embedded in that programming. It gives consumers the ability to invent for themselves how they want to participate with us in the marketplace. And this is a brand new way of interacting with consumers. As a matter of fact, it's going to change how we have to relate to them. Now, in all of this, it's clear that technology plays a very crucial role. But technology is more the facilitator than the originator of what's going on. All technology is doing is unleashing this pent-up demand and frustration on the part of consumers and giving consumers an opportunity to finally act on this. It's no longer wishful thinking for consumers to want to be in complete charge of how they participate with us in the marketplace. Technology has created an opportunity, and there's a new imperative in the marketplace. And really, this is my key message here today. Self-invention is going to demand a wholly new approach to the way in which we do marketing because it's going to present us with wholly new problems to be solved in the marketplace. And indeed, the way in which we're going to have to respond to that will require that we have new kinds of tools with which we manage our position in the marketplace. In particular, we're going to need tools that have better context. We're not only going to need to look at what consumers do, we're going to need to look at the context within which they do those things. And by the way, just as a footnote, this does not mean that you should have survey research alongside behavioral modeling, because survey research is worthless if it doesn't give you more context to your view of the marketplace. We're not talking about tools per se. We're really talking about the results of those tools, and context is what you need. You get that by having tools that are more complete in the view of the marketplace they give you. Not just behaviors, but also trends and motivations and values and lifestyles, and tools with context and completeness that are focused on this key dynamic of empowering consumers. That is, building a business by giving up power to consumers instead of trying to overpower consumers. Or to say it even a little bit more strongly, it means reworking the value equation of how we deliver benefits to consumers. You know, otherwise we're going to find ourselves being the Barnes and Nobles of the future, watching the Amazon.coms pull further and further ahead. For example,